Has this changed your attitude about your country, about government, about the rule of law? I ask you this because your situation is, in my view, quite horrific. And that's my opinion looking at the video. You don't need to comment on that. And then I see what's going on in the state of Israel with former Prime Minister Netanyahu. Now we know the police forces there were tapping phones, including of his son and other individuals, without even warrants, which I guess you don't need in Israel, but maybe you do, and leaking stuff to the press and just trying to take him out and destroy him completely. You see what happened to President Trump with Russia collusion. You saw what happened with the FISA court. You saw what happened with McComey and McCabe and the money being funneled through a law firm from Hillary Clinton and the DNC. All these things going on, and the media is so much a part of it. And then you see what happened to you. Now, you've signed these documents and so forth, but my question to you is, putting the specifics aside, have you lost faith in the system?
Yes, I have. But losing faith doesn't mean losing my conviction or my resolve to move forward. And I want to make sure that that distinction is very, very clear. It's going to take me a long time to get over this. We're talking about levels of PTSD and trauma and ways in which I have been spiritually damaged that will take perhaps a lifetime to be able to work through. That being said, one thing that has not shaken in the slightest is my faith and my belief that America is worth fighting for, and that this is a country that must be saved, and that our values and our cherished freedoms must be defended and must be preserved. And so, as much as I believe that they have tried their hardest to destroy me, to try to break me, and to try to push me into a corner where I'm too scared or too broken to continue to defend the things that are so important to me, I want to let all of those people in the Department of Justice, on either side of the aisle politically, or anybody who tried to come after me over this last year, you did not win. You did not succeed in your campaign to try to break my spirit. I'm coming back. The walkaway campaign is coming back, and I am never going to stop fighting for America. I'm never going to stop fighting for our cherished values and our freedom.
This is where freedom rings.
If you believe in America, if you believe in the Constitution empowers us. It's a new day. America's back. America's back, and America's going to get strong again. We're going to defend America, and we're going to defend our interests.
Liberty's voice, LEVIN TV.
Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is LEVIN TV, January 6th, a day that will live in the infamy of the minds of the left. In the media, they're obsessed with this date, more than they're obsessed with any of the rioting that took place in the summer of 2020, and the mayhem and the murder and so forth that continues to this day, January 6th. You know, what's interesting is I've always taken the position, if you commit a crime, you should do the time. You break into the Capitol building, and you can be proven to have broken into the Capitol building or to physically harmed a police officer, committed act of violence, okay, fine. But if you're walking around the Capitol building, or if you're even waved into the Capitol building, and you're quote-unquote parading on government property, or quote-unquote trespassing on government property, what the hell is that? I mean, it wasn't long before you saw President Trump's inauguration where Washington, D.C. was under attack, or the President of the United States had to be taken to the nuclear bunker underneath the White House because the White House was under attack and 50 Secret Service agents were injured. And the next day, the president goes out on Lafayette Park and goes in front of St. John's Church, which was partially burned, and the media accused him of being a dictator. And by the way, it wasn't just St. John's Church. I went down there. It was that whole block. Even the kosher restaurant had its windows broken out. There were swastika signs, all kinds of stuff going on that the media didn't show you. I have been concerned that there are hundreds of individuals on January 6th who committed no acts of violence, really no serious acts at all, and that the federal government, the Department of Justice, is focused on them and throwing the book at them from the FBI to the prosecutors to the federal district judges there, along this narrative that this was some kind of an insurrection. Now, again, making no excuses for violent behavior or attacks on cops, it's the funniest kind of insurrection in the history of insurrections, since the only firing that took place was the shooting of a veteran woman who was shot and murdered and killed on the spot. She didn't commit any act of violence. She wasn't carrying a weapon. And as far as I know, that's the only weapon that was fired. And the vast majority of the people who are in prison today in Washington, D.C. did not have weapons and did not attack the police. They're waiting for their trial dates. So that's a thumbnail sketch of what took place. Now, Brandon Straka has wanted to tell his story, as he did on radio, but we will have the benefit of a video here, his video, which we will play, and which I would ask Brandon, when we turn to Brandon, to comment on, and we can stop it as he wishes us to stop it as we go along the way. But Brandon really is a very brave young man as he started this walkaway campaign in 2018. I can assure you, if he'd been part of Antifa or Black Lives Matter, any of that, very unlikely he'd be in the position that he's in today. Brandon, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing okay, Mark. I want to thank you so much for having me here, giving me a platform to be able to tell my side of the story.
Well, you would think you would have any platform in America that people would be, interested in this, particularly newsrooms, but that's apparently not the case, which is one of the reasons we started this enterprise, CRTV and then Blaze Media and LEVIN TV. So let's jump into this, Brandon. We're going to take a look at your video on January 6th, but before we do, and you walk us and narrate through that, before the video's even turned on, tell us what your morning was like, your day was like, and where you were positioned on the Capitol building and so forth, since this is all very relevant. So I'm going to turn it to you. Go right ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, one thing, my case has been dragged out over the course of a year. There have been 5 continuances in this case. And so I've had to remain very quiet for a very, very long time and actually watch as the media narratives have taken hold about January 6th. And that's on both sides, by the way. I mean, mostly on the left, but the right has also sort of developed their narrative. And I've kind of been sitting here pulling my hair out over the last year, because those of us who were actually there, who actually got sort of ensnared in this nightmare, haven't really had an opportunity to correct a lot of the false narratives that are taking place on both sides. One thing that's very important to me to say, because I literally have not heard a single person on either side of the aisle say this in a media interview, is that there are 4 sides to the Capitol building: north, south, east, and west. The violence and the destruction that have become synonymous with January 6th happened almost exclusively on the west side of the Capitol during a certain period of time. Yet those of us, all of us who were arrested or were in some way charged or accused of being involved in any wrongdoing connected with January 6th, are all expected to shoulder the burden of being labeled insurrectionists, terrorists, what have you, when we didn't even see or witness or know that that type of destruction was taking place. I was only on the east side of the Capitol building for a very short period of time. And in fact, the period of time where I broke the law, which is to say that I was on the Capitol steps, which is the restricted grounds area. I never went inside the Capitol. I honestly never got within about 20 feet of getting inside the Capitol. I had the opportunity to go in, but I chose not to. But I stood on the Capitol steps filming for about 8 minutes on the east side. And I did not witness, and I can't speak on behalf of other people, but I'd be willing to say that the majority of people on the east side, probably as well as the north and south side, had no idea of the destruction and violence that had occurred on the west side of the building. But any person who's been raided by the FBI, nabbed, thrown in jail, is now being charged, having our lives destroyed and torn apart. We're all expected to shoulder this sort of equal burden of being an equal participant in an insurrection, in an act of terror, when in fact, the vast majority of us who weren't on the west side at any point didn't even know those things happened.
Well, that's why we're supposed to treat each person as an individual, not as part of a group. Each person the facts as applied to the law to apply to them, and that's not what we're seeing in the media or from the Department of Justice, as a matter of fact. And I've tried to point this out. You've got to treat individuals as individuals because each case is different. And the vast majority of individuals actually didn't do anything. Maybe they trespassed or jaywalked or something like that. But typically the federal government doesn't throw all its resources at people that might be trespassing or parading or jaywalking or whatever the case may be. So that is a very, very important distinction. So walk through, if you would, that day for you up to the point at which we come to the video.
Certainly. So I was actually supposed to be a speaker that day at a permitted event that was scheduled at the Capitol after President Trump spoke at the Ellipse. This was the plan as I knew it for a week or two leading up to January 6th. There were a lot of inconsistencies in terms of the planning. I mean, there were so many things happening at the same time. And at one point it was, we're speaking at 10 a.m. Then it was, President Trump is speaking maybe at 11 or 12. We're speaking after President Trump. But there was always, as far as my understanding, an event at the Ellipse where President Trump was going to speak, followed by a march to the Capitol. And then there were going to be dozens of speakers speaking at the Capitol. And I was one of the scheduled speakers. And because there were so many people in DC that day, I would estimate hundreds of thousands of people from the stage at the Ellipse clear back almost to the Washington Monument. It was an enormous sea of people. And President Trump very clearly said in his speech that we were going to march peacefully to the Capitol. We were all going to go there. Everything seemed perfectly normal to me. Now, I had a really amazing seat that day at the Ellipse. And one of the problems with that is that I was one of the last people to be able to exit the Ellipse grounds because I was so close to the stage. So I was one of the very last people to get out of there. And my hired security had told me, you can't do the march. There's too many people. It's putting you in too much danger. So we're going to have to travel to the Capitol by the DC Metro. So I got on the Metro. It took 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes or so of travel to get to the stop closest to the Capitol. And it was around that time that we were approaching the stop at the Capitol that I began receiving text messages from people pretty confused. They were asking questions. Some people were at home watching television and saying people are going inside the building. Or it appears that they've gone inside the Capitol or the Capitol has been breached. Now, I didn't really understand what that meant, but I thought to myself of the number of times over the last few years that left-wing activists have become upset, whether it was the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh or a number of different issues where left-wing protesters went inside buildings, made noise, hollered, ended up getting dragged out. It was a mild disturbance. But I'd never witnessed anything like that happen from somebody who was a conservative protester or a Republican protester. Usually the people on my side of the aisle tend to be very calm, very mild-natured. And in fact, I'm an activist myself who's thrown dozens of events over the last few years. I'm often frustrated with the fact that it's hard to even get people out of their homes, get them just to show up and hold a sign. So when I started hearing, getting these messages saying people are going inside, that sounded very unusual to me. And so I was of two minds at that point. Either I'm still speaking and the event is still going on as planned, or something very unique and unusual is happening at the Capitol. And I would like to go there and film it because I've got a very large social media audience and try to capture footage of exactly what it is that's going on. And so I proceeded forward toward the east side grounds of the Capitol, and I started shooting video around, I would estimate 3 to 5 blocks away from the Capitol. And I just shot one long continuous video. Now, nearly every detail of my case has been misreported by the media, every single piece of it. And one piece that's been misreported is that they say that I was shooting a live video to Twitter. So essentially they were saying that the video that people saw, which I uploaded later, I made a conscious decision hours after being at the Capitol to upload my video, was not a spontaneous live video that people are seeing, but in fact, something that I was documenting, and that later I went back to my hotel and I uploaded. The relevance of that, to the best that I can get into this, is that I was accused of doing and saying a lot of things by the Department of Justice in my video. But I want people, particularly my followers and people who know me, who know my heart, who know who I am, to really think about the fact that I made a conscious decision hours after shooting this video to upload it. And might I have made that conscious decision if I were in fact guilty of doing all of the things that the Department of Justice claims that I did? But I entered the Capitol grounds on the east side, and of particular note, I would say, is that as I was entering the grounds in the video, which you're about to see, there are no police officers, zero, not one whatsoever. There's no flurry of violent activity taking place on the grounds. In fact, the people that you'll see in the video are very calm. They're strolling about. I think you see a mother with their baby in a stroller. You see people riding bikes. The energy is just very calm, people sort of just milling about on the outer grounds. I take note of the fact that you see thousands of people in the video. Now, again, bear in mind, at this point, I had received several text messages telling me the Capitol's been breached, people are going inside. So I continued forward, and you'll notice that in my video, there is bike rack visible at several points in the video, but there are no actual barricades. The sidewalk, which is very large, is completely wide open and nothing is closed off. There are no barricades. There's no tape. There are no traffic cones. There's nobody saying you're not allowed to be here or anything that would indicate turn around. This is forbidden ground. I quite literally was walking into a crowd of thousands of people. And as I approached the grounds, I saw that there were a lot of people standing on the steps holding signs. Some people were singing songs, some people had karaoke machines, etc. But at the top of the steps, I could see that there was a little more activity taking place up there. And there was a man standing at the top of the steps with his hat in his hand, waving down to the people below, shouting, "They've opened the doors. They're letting us in. They're letting us in. We're going inside. We're going inside." And that's the point where I started repeating the things that I was saying or hearing to my audience, who would eventually be hearing and watching the video, which we're about to see.
All right, so at this point, the video's turned on as Brandon's making his way on the east side of the Capitol. So let's take a look.
Could I make one comment before we start?
Yeah.
In addition to the fact that I was criminally charged with multiple charges applying to what you're about to see, I've also been named as a defendant in a civil suit by what I'm calling a social justice law firm in Washington, D.C. that are representing 7 or 8 Capitol police officers in a lawsuit against Donald Trump, Roger Stone, myself, and numerous other people. And in this lawsuit, these Capitol police officers and their lawyers claim that I violently breached barricades to enter the Capitol grounds and then physically assaulted police officers, including the plaintiffs. So I would just like people to have that in their mind as they watch this, that I am being accused in the civil suit of violently breaching barricades onto the Capitol grounds and physically assaulting police officers.
All right. Well, at least there's some police officers that the left cares about. Most, of course, they do not. Let's go. Go.
Thousands of people here.
So Jen's husband
we're going in. The people are going in. Look at this. Are people going in?
One thing I'd like to point out is that's my voice that you just heard on the video saying, are people going in? I was asking the people around me because I was trying to get an accurate assessment of what the situation was. As you can see, the doors were already open as I got to the top of the stairs. Nobody's breaking anything. Now, I'm not here to say that the behavior of all of these people or myself was perfect, but I am here to say that nobody's breaking anything. Nobody's trying to hurt anybody or smash anything. I was inquiring if the doors are open. And the other thing that's relevant is that many of these people in front of me were taller than me. There's a good amount of people. People have flags on poles. At this point, my arms are fully extended above my head with my camera pointed down toward the door because my eyes could not see what we are seeing right now. This is from the point of view of my camera fully extended above my head, pointed down toward the door, because many of the accusations against me in this case that's gone on for a year is basically alleging that I witnessed with my own eyes every single thing that you're about to see on this video, which I could not see.
Well, at this point, and I haven't seen the video, it's the first time I'm watching it with you, I am perplexed. The door's open. I don't see a police officer there. No. I don't see a security person there. I don't see anybody saying, don't come in the building. For all you know back there is that the door has been opened so people can come in and meet their member of Congress or do what it is that people do when they protest, which happens. So at this point, I don't know what it is that you did that was wrong, to be perfectly honest with you. I honestly don't. I can't see it. Again, as a spectator just watching this, just look at the door. There's nobody around the door. There's nobody yelling at you folks. There's nobody with a bullhorn giving you orders, telling you don't breach the building. I see absolutely nothing. You see anything, Mr. Producer? Nothing. You're holding up your iPhone. That's what you're doing.
One thing I will say is that it is, as it turns out, against the law to protest on the Capitol steps. Now, in the plea agreement that I signed that was written by the DOJ, it is stated that I knew that in advance when I made the choice to go on the steps. So I'm not here to contradict that. I'm just saying that I don't know that the vast majority of the public knows that it is illegal to stand on the Capitol steps and protest.
I must tell you, Brandon, I did not know that. God, how many protests have been on the Capitol steps? I mean, I'm sure there's been a zillion of them. Anyway, go right ahead.
No problem. So you had mentioned that the door is open. Actually, both doors were open at the moment that I approached. For a brief moment in the video, you can see that one of the doors either closed or became partially closed, but it's about to open again too. So the vast majority of the time, both doors were wide open. And as I had approached the Capitol steps, as you saw, there was a man standing there saying, they opened the doors, we're going inside. And I don't think that anybody who was there at that moment would have had any idea that they means people on the other side of the building who came in through a broken window or a smash. I mean, I would assume everyone there had the assumption that somebody had opened the doors to allow people to go inside of the Capitol. And again, there was nothing to indicate that these people were going to go inside and storm the Senate floor. I mean, this was just doors open, people saying we're going inside. I didn't have the benefit of knowing what was going to happen next and that people were going to go on the floor or do whatever it was that they were going to do. So you're quite right. And in terms of the knowledge,
well, let me just explain legally why this is. You have no notice. You have no notice. In other words, that this is a secure area, that the door wasn't opened by the authorities, that any of this. You had no notice, really, that you were trespassed. Well, you're on the Capitol steps. You should know better. I wouldn't have known better, to be perfect. I'm trying to put myself in this position. I wouldn't have entered the building just because it would have seemed a little odd to me. But that said, there's really, if you're coming in here from Missouri and you're protesting and you march to the Capitol, and I've seen no violence thus far at this side of the building, as you mentioned. I see no violence at the door. I don't see any broken windows. I don't see any broken doors. Even the people who are hollering, they're not really hollering that badly as far as protests go. I'm not trying to be a special pleader. I'm watching it with the rest of the country here. So far, so good. No big deal.
The moment you just saw is kind of a key moment in all of this as well. So you've got what I would estimate to be hundreds of people very close together in a very confined space. For anybody who's ever been to a festival or a rock concert or something like that, where you've got a lot of people pushed together, you know the danger that can sometimes happen when the crowd begins to sway to the left and the crowd begins to sway to the right, forward, backward. So that was beginning to happen. And there was a girl in the crowd right in front of me who wanted to walk away from the Capitol. And she was kind of shoving against the crowd. And it was causing this sort of swaying effect. And I saw an opening at this point because I was about ready to lose my feet. Now, I'm not contradicting what I signed in the plea agreement. The government claims that I was shouting, "Go, go," to encourage people to go inside the Capitol and I guess commit heinous acts of violence. I'm not contradicting that. I'm merely pointing out that after you hear me right there shout, "Go, go," you also happen to hear a girl respond to me and say, "Relax, relax, I'm going," and walk against the crowd.
Let me just say this for the audience as a legal matter. Brandon signed a plea agreement where he has agreed to the allegations in the plea agreement as a condition for not going to trial. And as a lawyer, I can tell you, so he can't come in this program and contradict what he signed, because I would just say, firstly, he believed what he signed, but secondly, that would put him in very serious legal jeopardy. As I understand here, there is a young girl that you're saying that was trying to get out of there. And at the same time the crowd was moving, you were saying, "Go, go." So the audience can draw their own conclusion. People heading in.
This is our house. This is our country. We are taking it back. We're taking it back today. What's going on?
Let's stop here. You did make an interesting point earlier in the program, Brandon, where you said, or I'll say it, if you actually thought you committed some offense, why would you be videotaping this and then put it online for the whole world to see, including the authorities? That would seem kind of strange. Go ahead. All right, let's stop there. Obviously, there's some police there, right? With the
Correct.
shields out, and people are pushing them now to push through. Go ahead.
I want to take just a brief moment to remind the audience that, again, my camera is fully above my head and pointed down. Mm-hmm. So anything that you may be seeing right now does not necessarily mean that my eyes saw it. My eyes were a good several feet below where the camera is. And the moment that we just watched a minute or so ago with an officer having his shield taken is incredibly central to my case. Because the allegation that eventually came against me and that I signed a plea agreement agreeing to the government written narrative of what happened in this case is that I was a participant in encouraging that crowd to take that shield from that police officer.
Now, I will just say here, and you don't need to comment on this, I don't see you anywhere near their shield, to be perfectly honest. And I don't hear you yelling out about the shield or anything of the sort. To the extent you say things on this video, it's almost commentary about what's taking place. It's not, from my perspective, watching with my own two eyes, listening with my own two ears. You see this, Mr. Perdue? I don't see anything. Go ahead. And it's clear there some people want to get out of there. They're trying to get out of the crowd there right now. Go ahead. Now stop. So that's pretty much your eye level there, right? You're seeing into the back of people's heads and a flag and so forth.
It's actually still higher than eye level, but yes.
Mm-hmm. All right, go ahead.
Ain't breathing there. I can smell it right here.
gas. We're being gassed right now.
Now, I've attended many protests over the last 3 or 4 years. I've never experienced tear gas in my life. And the reason why I made the comment that I made just then is because for a split second, as I was looking forward to what I could see, I almost felt like the air became a little bit wavy, like this, like the visual representation of gas in the air. I had a mask over my face. So it's hard. I don't know if I recall actually breathing a little bit of something or not, but I made the comment, they're using gas. And that was mostly based off the fact that I saw a little bit of waviness in the air and that somebody around me was coughing a little bit, like he had breathed something in. And to be clear, I didn't know who was using gas. I was surrounded by people who had helmets on, people who had masks on their face. And so I made that comment, but I want to be clear because it's kind of been presented as though there were like a police army that was shooting gas out at us, which really was not the experience.
Was I relevant to the government?
Well, the narrative seemed to be that there were many indicators that I should not have been there. One of which was the presence of noxious chemicals and gas in the air. Now, again, I'm not here today to say that my behavior was perfect, that I did nothing wrong. That is not my position.
No, but my question is, was that comment relevant to the government as they were presenting its case?
I would say that it was a detail that was brought up several times that I should have known about the illegality of my actions based off of the fact that there were chemical pollutants in the air that I could have experienced.
And the illegality of your actions include the shield and telling the audience to go, go, go?
Well, I was charged with a felony of knowingly occupying restricted grounds. I was charged with another felony of impeding an officer in the line of duty. And I was charged with a misdemeanor of disorderly conduct on the Capitol grounds or something like that.
Which officer were you impeding?
The officer whose shield was taken.
All right. I'll keep my comments for later. Go ahead.
Yeah, they're pumping gas out to his shield so hard. Oh my God. I'm down for it. Come on. You got hit hard? Yeah. We got our job done. Get in? We did. We stood
This is our house.
Let's get out. Let's get out of here.
All right. And we're going to do it again. We ain't taking this guy.
Mission accomplished. Back out, guys. They've already evacuated the senators and House. They're all f***ing cowards. We've done our job. We've done our job. Let's move out. Let's move out. Let's move out. We have done our job.
So he seems to be saying, let's get out of there. Am I wrong?
Right. And what you'll notice now is that I immediately turn around and start encouraging the people behind me to leave.
Okay, go ahead.
Everyone's evacuated.
That's me.
Everyone
Telling
needs to go
everyone to
this
go the other
way.
direction.
Everyone's evacuated. Okay.
Excuse me, guys. Sorry, can we skip through?
So, concisely, what happens thereafter? What do? You go get a hot dog and go back to the hotel or something?
Well, I spent, I'd say, about another 30 minutes on the outer grounds, just interviewing those people that you saw there in the crowd, asking them what brought them out, what was their experience, I have 13 videos. I had intended to put together almost like a little mini documentary until I went back to my hotel. At that point, I was beginning to hear a lot of strange things, because I had been contacted by several cable news shows saying, can you come on tonight, show your footage and talk about what you saw? And I said, of course. And but then I started to get messages back from some of these producers saying, well, the story is changing. We're not going to have you on after all. And I thought to myself, what does that mean? The story is changing. And I was back at my hotel at this point. I turned on the news, and that's when I started to see the cable news talking heads talking about how ashamed they were about what had happened at the Capitol, and just saying that they were mortified. Oh my God, this isn't who we are. Now, I screwed up big time, and I own this. It was 100% my fault. But I believed at that point that the Capitol breach was everything that you just saw. I mean, as I was approaching, the man said they opened the doors. I thought the doors had just been opened. I thought that 8 minutes that I stood outside filming as people were trying to make their way in was the totality of the great Capitol breach. And it ended with a man coming out and saying, turn around, we're leaving. And I turned around and left. So I'm sitting there thinking, okay, this isn't model behavior, that this large crowd wanted to go inside, but I don't think it's the most shameful thing that's ever happened in American history. And so I got on Twitter and I made some comments about how I was not happy with the cable news talking heads shaming these people at the Capitol. I said, we've just gone through 2 months of these people wanting an audit of the election, of wanting to make sure that they know that their vote counted. And now it seems like they're being steamrolled and nobody's listening to them. And I'm not going to join into the cacophony of noise from these talking heads that are shaming these people at the Capitol. And then I even put out another tweet where I said, patriots at the Capitol, hold the line. And I want to be clear, when I said that, what I was talking about was the group of people that you saw. Some of them were singing songs, holding signs, chanting USA, etc. I thought to myself, hold your ground, stand there, stay outside for a day or two. Show them that this is how much this actually means to you. And it was about, I'd say 2 hours or so after I made those comments on Twitter, I started to see the footage that was coming out on the west side of the building, window smashing, people shoving police officers, scaling walls, making their way in. I thought to myself, oh my God, this is much more than what I witnessed, much more than I thought it was. And I immediately at that point took my tweets down. I took my video down, the video that you just saw. I posted that myself on Twitter. And I thought that was the end of the story. I did put out a couple of comments where I said, look, I didn't have the full story here. I screwed up. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, to be honest with you. And I went back home And about 2.5 weeks later, on January 25th, 2021, an FBI SWAT team came to my house at the crack of dawn, pounding on my door. I went and I opened the door, and within 30 seconds, I was turned around and handcuffed. They told me they were taking me to jail, that I was facing multiple felony charges for my role in the Capitol insurrection. And they presented me with a search warrant to take my property. And at that point, a team of FBI agents came into my home and began stripping it of cameras, hard drives, computers, phones, tablets, clothing, taking my things. And from there, they took me to jail. And I spent 2 days in 24-hour lockdown in a jail cell before somebody came, opened the door, and I was able to see a judge.
And you must have said, what the hell was going on? What exactly did I do? Now, 2 days. How were you treated for those 2 days? Pretty much ignored or what?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, first of all, the guards, who in my case, I had really no problem with, but nobody, once you go into the jail system and they put that orange jumpsuit on you and they take your mug shot and they put a bracelet on your wrist with a number on it, you're just a prisoner at that point. Nobody knows why you're there. No one cares. No one cares about your case. So I was sitting in a concrete cell with a metal door, and they told me, you're not going to be allowed outside of your cell. And I kept asking, will I see a judge today? I didn't even know what I was charged with. All I had been told at this point was that I was facing multiple felony charges for what I had done at the Capitol. Now, this was January 25th, 5 days after Joe Biden took office. The Democrats have taken full control of the federal government. And I'm now sitting in a jail cell, not even knowing what I'm charged with or if or when I'm ever going to be able to see a judge. I didn't have an attorney at this point. I didn't know if anybody had any idea that I was in there or was going to help me. And it took 2 days before my team was able to get an attorney, and that attorney was able to get a visit with me, and they let me out of my cell for the first time.
Brandon, there's this guy, Chris Hayes, on MSNBC in December of last year, and he does a little report, and I'd like to play this and have you comment on it as it proceeds. Go.
All of those people, those closer to Trump and those in the outer circles, all of them appear to have been smart enough not to commit the federal crime of storming the Capitol live on television. Brandon Straka is the exception because he was there. He was in the crowd on the steps of the Capitol. He recorded what he saw and what he said.
We're going in. They're saying we're going in. We're going in.
I opened the door.
We're going in. The people are going in. Look at this. Go, go. Yeah, they're putting gas out.
Yeah, the take the shield, that's him yelling that, documenting it. Now, the extent there was official planning and programming around the insurrection, that guy, Brandon Straka, was also involved in the, official events that were going on. He spoke at a rally the afternoon before the 6th, riling up the crowd.
Patriots! Welcome to the revolution! We, ladies and gentlemen, are a problem for the media in this country. We are a problem for the Democrat Party. We are a problem for the rhinos who wanted to lay down and hand over this election to Joe Biden and the Democrats. Help me tell them right now, we're not going away. We're not going away. We're not going away. We're not going away.
That was the promise they made on January 5th, Brandon Straka, that we're not going away, and they, in fact, didn't go away the next day. Straka has also claimed that he was scheduled to speak at the Capitol on January 6th. So he's this interesting key figure who is essentially at the intersection of the two activities on that day. There's the legal, First Amendment protected protest that happens at the Ellipse and people assembling to say they think Donald Trump should be president. That's legal, and then the illegal violent coup attempt when
All right,
they
let's
invaded
stop
the
a
Capitol.
second. I've heard worse on MSNBC from anchors, from Nicole Wallace, from Al Sharpton, from The Morning Joe, and others who sit there. I've heard worse from Joy Reid and what's her name, Terry Cross or whatever her name is, and I can go down the list of what they have said, of what they encourage people to do, of the racist propaganda, and on and on and on. So to take something that took place, which we'll get to, Brandon, on January 6th, link it back to something that was said earlier, is really very sleazy. That's what you do when you're trying to edit a situation, rather than take it seriatim. That is, one event, another event, another event. And revolution, and we're not going anywhere. These are typical phrases that can be used at a rally. These are phrases that if they are criminalized, every member of Congress, every one of these left-wing groups would be rounded up. They'd have to take crime tape and wrap it around the Capitol building and the DNC, and then to try and link it to something else, I think is really quite abhorrent. These guys probably would have arrested Thomas Paine if you read what Thomas Paine wrote. That said, let's jump into one piece of this, Brandon. So they take the statements you make about go, 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 grab the shield, and so forth. And what do you want to say about that?
Well, coming up a little in a moment in this interview, first of all, he says that I went inside the Capitol.
Well, all right, so let me continue it then. Let me continue the tape, all right? Go.
And that's what makes it such a big deal that he is cooperating. That rally on January 5th, where Straka spoke, was a fully legal demonstration, as was the January 6th rally at the Ellipse.
So why did you flip them? Why did you tell your audience? Why did you play January 6th and then January 5th?
He's also about to edit the footage to make it appear that I was on the west side of the building. So we're about to see very violent footage from the west side of the building, while he's saying, and this is what Brandon Straka was up to on that day.
And your video, they had access to, so they knew you weren't on the west side, and they could have played your video instead of playing this. Go.
Correct.
All of that was protected free speech. Where it veers off course into criminal activity, of course, is when the mob, including Brandon Straka, in that, I have to say, very nice coat, descended on the Capitol. And there is a really interesting question that's been developing that has to do with how
now,
the
two
decision...
things. As you just said, Brandon, you're not there.
No.
And number two, there is gas being used there. So that gas may have, in fact, blew its way to the other side of the Capitol, and maybe you did, in fact, smell some of this gas. I don't know. Go.
Was made to sick the mob on the Capitol. Donald Trump, of course, sent them, instructed them to go. He did it on camera in front of all of us at the rally at the Ellipse.
We're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I love Pennsylvania Avenue. And we're going to the Capitol.
And now we've got a guy who was there, who was involved.
Oh, wait a minute. They left out all the peacefully stuff. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, this is just unbelievable. Go ahead.
Up to the insurrection, who's on the stage there at the rally the day before, who breaks into the Capitol and who's cooperating with the federal government, and who says and has said on tape the plan all along was to go to the Capitol.
All right, did you put one toe, 1 inch into the Capitol building that day?
No. The video that you just saw was the closest I got to the building, which I would estimate was 20 feet away. He didn't just say I went in the Capitol. He said I broke into the Capitol.
So you weren't in the Capitol. You didn't break into the Capitol. You weren't on the west side of the Capitol. January 5th comes before January 6th when you're trying to lay out a narrative. And all those things were lied about during this clip. Go ahead.
Yesterday, a lot of us got up very, very early. We went to this event in which Donald Trump spoke. The plan was always to go to the Capitol. We were going to march from that event, which was at the Ellipse. The plan was always to march from the Ellipse to the Capitol. And there was going to be another rally. I was one of the speakers slated to speak at the Capitol.
Well, it turned into a rally inside the Capitol. And of course, Lee's opened some key questions. Whose plan was it to march? How did that plan come about, and who knew about it?
Didn't everybody know about it? Didn't they put out public information and emails and flyers saying, here's the speakers, we're going to protest and that sort of thing?
The event was called the March to Save America.
Mm-hmm.
The March to Save
Right.
America was the name of the event.
And so this is the narrative that's pushed out there. And the narrative is that you were in the building, you were part of the violence in the building, that you told people to grab the shield and go, go, go. How do you respond to that piece where they're saying, okay, he says, go, go, go. You've already answered that, but I want to make it abundantly clear. And the shield, get the shield or grab the shield. I forget the exact words.
Well, there isn't much I can say about it at this point. All I guess I would say in a more general sense is that for anybody who knows me, who has followed me, who knows my heart, I have always backed law enforcement in this country. That didn't change on January 6th. That didn't spontaneously change in a moment of losing myself. I've always backed the blue. I will always back the blue. And as a matter of fact, this year, my organization Walkaway always does kind of a holiday initiative to try to bring people together to do something good for the community. And so we kind of wanted to make a point this year. We did an initiative called Refund the Police, in which we raised almost $30,000 just in the month of December from my followers to give back money to police departments that have been defunded through the left's defund the police movement. And the point that I was trying to make in doing this was that my followers, in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of a terrible economy, will still give their dollars towards funding police officers and funding initiatives to help police. These people would not tolerate me engaging in anti-police behavior. And so I just want to make that point perfectly clear.
You were sentenced to 3 months of house confinement, 3 years of probation, 60 hours of community service, $500 in restitution, and a $5,000 fine. This was your quote-unquote first offense on a nonviolent Class B misdemeanor charge. You were made to sign a statement that you knew that the grounds were restricted and that you encouraged the crowd by yelling, "Take it," when a police officer's shield was taken away from him. Since your arrest, you were evicted 3 days after being released from jail. You were served a 30-day notice to vacate. Building management would not allow a lease renewal. You and Walkaway were permanently banned from all fundraising platforms, social media platforms, PayPal, Venmo, and others. You were placed on a terrorism watch list. Your TSA pre-check status has been revoked. If people want to help you, I'm sure you have legal fees that have piled up. Where do they go?
Well, I appreciate that. If people would like to help out, they can go to my website, brandonstraka.com. My last name is spelled Straka.com. We had to actually create a custom defense fund and payment processor because after I got out of jail, it was like facing machine gun fire. The amount of bad press and the amount of cancellations that we endured. So USA Today, the publication, has what they call an extremism department, where they report on white supremacy, terrorists, domestic terrorists like myself, Trump supporters, white people in America who are incredibly dangerous, even though after a year of investigation, it was determined that I was guilty of a Class B nonviolent misdemeanor charge. But USA Today, in the month of March 2021, about 2 months after I got out of jail, contacted PayPal, Stripe, all the major payment processors, and let them know that I had accounts with all of these companies and said, we're doing a story about domestic terrorists and insurrectionists who are using these payment processors to fund our legal defense funds, and basically said, you're going to get some very bad press from us for helping, these insurrectionists What do you intend to do about it? Now, I know this because USA Today reached out to me and told me they were doing the article and asked if I had a comment. Of course, I didn't respond, but within 24 hours, I got notices from PayPal, Venmo, Stripe, Patreon, etc., telling me that I am permanently banned from using their platform because I am considered to be a dangerous and violent individual.
The sentence seems pretty damn harsh, quite frankly. 3 months of house confinement. I take it you're in your house right now.
I am. I'm wearing an ankle monitor right now.
An ankle monitor.
Yes.
3 years of probation. Was this up to the discretion of the judge, or did the prosecution recommend this, or what?
Well, what happened was that the prosecution asked for, they provided a sentencing recommendation to the judge. And in their sentencing recommendation, they asked for 4 months of house arrest, 3 years of probation, 60 hours of community service, and $500 restitution for the capital. But the government, the prosecution, also asked, as a condition of my probation, which again, they're asking for 3 years, they asked that as a condition of my probation, they have the right to surveil my phone, my computer, my bank accounts, my social media accounts, and my email accounts for 3 years as a condition of my probation. Ultimately, what the judge ended up sentencing me with was not 4 months, but 3 months of house arrest, 3 years of probation, 60 hours of community service. The government didn't ask for a fine, but the judge did impose the maximum fine of $5,000 plus $500 restitution to the Capitol, although it was acknowledged that I didn't engage in any destruction or vandalism to the Capitol. Now, bear in mind, this is after my case was continued 5 times, dragging it out over the course of more than a year. And during that time, I was on pre-trial supervision, which is actually more strict than probation. So essentially, it's really like 4 years of probation. And I also spent 2 days in jail in 24-hour lockdown over what was ultimately deemed, these are not my words, this is the judge's words, the court's words, a petty offense, nonviolent misdemeanor charge.
My final question to you is, maybe not the final question, is what has this done to your life, to your psyche, to your stress, to you emotionally? Because I can't imagine going through something like this.
It has, there have been days, many days over the last year where I have questioned if I wanted to continue to live. And that's the truth. Not only, the thing I guess I want to get across to people is that what has happened to me, what I consider to be an egregious amount of harassment from the federal government. And this has come at me from every direction. I went through these criminal charges. I'm now facing civil charges from, again, this, what I call a social justice law firm in Washington, D.C. They're suing me, claiming that I was a conspirator to create January 6th, claiming that I violently breached barricades and attacked police officers. I have the January 6th committee breathing down my neck. The amount of stress, and not just stress, but I had to go through an entire year of only reading articles about myself that have accused me of being a domestic terrorist, that have called me an insurrectionist. One article actually said that I was partially responsible for 6 people's deaths on January 6th, for all of the people who died. Now, what I want to make really clear to people is all of that is terrible. I mean, it's so damaging to one's spiritual, emotional, and psychological health. But what has made this an almost unlivable situation at times is that I have gotten no support from anybody on the right side of the aisle. I have not been reached out to by any member of Congress, any former leader, anybody in the former administration. The conservative mainstream news is running from this story. And that's mostly because the narrative at this point is so established by the left that even though, according to the Department of Justice, I'm guilty of a nonviolent misdemeanor charge, the press, the media representation of this is that I am a violent, dangerous individual who was a key component in an insurrection to destroy our democracy and destroy, to try to overthrow the election of 2020. And rather than give me a platform to simply say, and I'm not asking for an endorsement, I'm not asking for anyone to have me on the air and say, you did nothing wrong, you don't deserve all this. I just want the opportunity to try to clear the air and set the record straight on what is and is not accurate. And that's why I'm so grateful to you and thankful to you for giving me this opportunity today, because I don't think I'm going to have many opportunities like this. And that's the part that has been the most destructive and damaging to me, is feeling like I am completely alone in this situation.
I suspect after people watch this, you won't be completely alone. Certainly not by, I don't like the phrase average American, but by red-blooded Americans out there. I think many of them are going to be very upset by this. Now, the real final question. Has this changed your attitude about your country, about government, about the rule of law? I ask you this because your situation is, in my view, quite horrific. And that's my opinion looking at the video. You don't need to comment on that. And then I see what's going on in the state of Israel with former Prime Minister Netanyahu. Now we know the police forces there were tapping phones, including of his son and other individuals, without even warrants, which I guess you don't need in Israel, but maybe you do, and leaking stuff to the press and just trying to take him out and destroy him completely. You see what happened to President Trump with Russia collusion. You saw what happened with the FISA court. You saw what happened with McComey and McCabe and the money being funneled through a law firm from Hillary Clinton and the DNC. All these things going on, and the media is so much a part of it. And then you see what happened to you. Now, you've signed these documents and so forth, but my question to you is, putting the specifics aside, have you lost faith in the system?
Yes, I have. But losing faith doesn't mean losing my conviction or my resolve to move forward. And I want to make sure that that distinction is very, very clear. It's going to take me a long time to get over this. We're talking about levels of PTSD and trauma and ways in which I have been spiritually damaged that will take perhaps a lifetime to be able to work through. That being said, one thing that has not shaken in the slightest is my faith and my belief that America is worth fighting for, and that this is a country that must be saved, and that our values and our cherished freedoms must be defended and must be preserved. And so, as much as I believe that they have tried their hardest to destroy me, to try to break me, and to try to push me into a corner where I'm too scared or too broken to continue to defend the things that are so important to me, I want to let all of those people in the Department of Justice, on either side of the aisle politically, or anybody who tried to come after me over this last year, you did not win. You did not succeed in your campaign to try to break my spirit. I'm coming back. The walkaway campaign is coming back, and I am never going to stop fighting for America. I'm never going to stop fighting for our cherished values and our freedom. And if people want to join me in this mission, I highly suggest that they go to walkawaycampaign.com and get involved. Volunteer, donate, support to my organization. We've got a hell of a lot of work to do. This last year just showed me that very, very clearly, but I'm not backing down and I'm not going to stop. I sat across from you 2 years ago, Mark, on Life, Liberty, and Levin, and you said to me, aren't these people essentially going to make your life hell? And I remember I responded to you, maybe they are, but if they're going to come after me, they've got the wrong guy, because I don't quit, I don't give up. And if they're going to come after me, I will outfox them at every turn. And I have not changed my position on that.
All right, Brandon Straka, I want to thank you for your time on the program, the Walkaway campaign, and we wish you the best of luck. God bless.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, folks, that was kind of harrowing, wasn't it? Thank you for watching LEVIN TV. See you next time.